Hello, and welcome to episode 21 of Baki Talkie. We've made it into, I guess we're already in the double digits, and we already hit 20 last time, so not much of a milestone episode, but it's still going to be a good one. This episode is, of course, titled Punishment. There's a lot of that in this episode, and to help me discuss it, we have my good friend, Jax.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here.
So, Jax, before we jump into everything, I have two questions that I ask all of my guests to let the audience get to know you a bit better. So, first off,
Okay.
Other than Baki, what shows are you currently watching?
Oh, currently, I'm currently watching Barry. I know a little bit behind on that coming out, but it's a good show of mine. And Drag Race, funny enough. I just came into that little passion because I saw Ben Lecreme perform live. He's a drag queen here in Toronto. So that's been fun. But otherwise, I've been off the TV kick for a little while. I used to be fairly obsessed, so I could give you what I past watched, but it's been a little while.
No, that was perfect. That hits all the boxes for answers, which is I don't watch much and Barry. Very, very common. If you had thrown in Stranger Things, I think that would have been the perfect match.
No, I skipped this season. I didn't watch season 5, which I hear is a crime because it was a good one, but
it's
not for
one.
me.
But the thing is, you could just wait until like when the next season comes out. That'll be the final one. So you could do like both at the same time. Then the other question: before you watched this episode, what did you know about Baki?
Absolutely nothing. To be honest, it was so unmemorable that I forgot the name of it in terms of your podcast, which is kind of embarrassing. But yeah, I mean, I knew that it was a anime, and that's really the extent of it. So I came in really blind.
Wow, on the topic of blind.
I can't see.
But we won't get there yet. So this episode picks up right where the last one ended, in the middle of the greatest tag team battle of all time. On one side, we have Ryuko Yanagi and Sikorsky, two death row inmates who have cornered Baki in a local abandoned park in Japan. And on the other side, we have Baki and his soulmate, Kozue.
Baki, wait a minute. Please, let me help you.
Thanks, Kozue. You're the best. But I'll be okay. There's like no way these guys beat me.
And that's where we left things off last time. Jax, want to walk me through what happens in this scene?
Oh, I was so confused. The biggest thing that I was confused by is, first of all, when they hit each other, why do their faces explode and they get these big red marks? So that was confusing. And then there's something about poison at some point when they're hitting and Baki isn't being defeated by the poison, which I don't understand how that happens when he's simply getting hit.
My hand lashed so hard across his body, I broke the skin and drew blood. Why hasn't the poison kicked in yet?
And then the last thing I don't understand is that they claim that he became stronger because he just had sex, or that he can become stronger simply by taking a walk, and then he thinks about being stronger, and then he gets stronger. And then the end of the scene is some scientist-y looking dude shows up and compliments how strong Baki is, and then Baki runs away when the two guys he just defeated seem to resurrect and have a weird zombie moment, and then aren't zombies anymore, and then the scientist guy says, "I'm not going to fight you," and he also leaves, and then the scene ends.
All right, well, let's dive into a few parts there. So first off, the poison. So as we spent an excruciating amount of time on last week, Ryuko Yanagi he put a bunch of poison in sand and then punched that sand repeatedly for days until his hand became a poison hand by dipping it in poison sand. And then he was able to slap Baki so hard that he ripped his skin off. So we spent a lot of time on the setup for the poison. It doesn't come up at all in this episode, so there's no payoff for now. But as I said last week, there will be payoff. Baki will be poisoned, maybe in a month or a few weeks from now.
I was concerned that he wouldn't be, so that's good.
Yes. Oh, don't worry. Everything makes sense eventually, sort of. But to your second point, or your third point, yes, Baki had sex. He lost his virginity in the last episode, and canonically, they've spelled it out for us in about 4 or 5 different lines. He is now much, much stronger than he was before.
That's it. You've become far stronger than you've ever been before by getting biblical with that girl. All it took was an experience almost anyone on Earth who's been through puberty could have.
Do you think that's like a real world thing, or do you think that that was just added in for the show?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a very heteronormative ideal that that you have sex and suddenly you're a real man. So quite an interesting little trope that they've thrown in there, and extended it to be not just a real man, but gaining strength. So interesting.
Yeah, Baki's an interesting show like that. Like, on the one hand, you could describe it as very hetero. But if you really boil it down to the root word of, like, homogenous, like, there's almost no women on this show. Like, it's almost entirely men. I'm excited
for us to get to the gay lovers. So I'm curious about that.
I'm glad. I'm glad you jumped onto that angle of viewing it, because that's yeah. No, we'll get to Doyle. Oh yeah. So how did you refer to the guy who showed up? The scientist.
Oh, the scientist dude. Yeah. He was in a white suit, so he reminded me of like Professor Oak from Pokemon.
It's Professor Oak if he started bench lifting.
Yeah.
So halfway through the fight, Hanayama comes back. So Hanayama actually is a mob boss. They have a slightly similar outfit choice, I'd say. Also, the reason he's wearing a mask is because his face blew up the last time he fought somebody. So he sort of has like 3 mouth holes now. But that's a whole other can of worms. So yeah, not quite a scientist, but he does play a peacekeeping role. So just to summarize for the listeners, Yanagi and Sikorsky try and fight Baki, and Baki just demonstrates that now that he has had sex, he is on a completely different tier than them, and honestly, he sort of gets bored, and just Hanayama shows up, he picks up Kozue, he being Baki, runs away out into the streets of Tokyo.
See ya!
And then Yanagi and Sikorsky are just sort of left standing around in the park, upset with each other. So we didn't get much of an intro to any of these characters. I feel like Baki's a bit easier to understand. Like, he had sex and now he's super strong. What did you think the other 2 guys were there for?
Oh, see, you've kind of spoiled it for me because you said they were escaped inmates or something just about 2 minutes ago. Okay, so I didn't know that. It was confusing. I mean, the episode opens up, I guess, as you said, I'm picking up in the middle of a scene that the last one ended on. So, yeah, zero context. But, yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense with you saying that they're mafia. I don't know if they're related to, in terms of character relationships, the scientist dude. But I was rather confused as to why they hate Baki so much. And then Baki doesn't come back for the rest of the episode too. So I got zero resolution in terms of why that fight happened or where Baki went.
Yeah, I'll give you the super brief Sparks notes. But basically, 5 death row inmates spontaneously broke out of their jail cells across the world and flew to Japan to taste defeat. So they tried to find the strongest fighters in the world, which all live in Japan, because the author is from Japan and loves Japanese martial arts. And so they just wanted to fight Baki so that they would lose, which doesn't really come across in this fight at all, I'd say, because Baki kicks their ass and they don't seem very happy about it. But that's why it happened, if that clears things up at all.
Yeah, interesting that you say that, because Baki has the line at the end where he goes, "I don't have to win, I just have to protect." So was Baki no longer interested in defeating these guys?
I don't think he ever was, to be honest. He was just having sex when Yanagi came and knocked on their door.
As one does. When I have sex, I know that people try and beat me up too. So.
Well, yeah, it's better than the first time Baki tried. His dad showed up in the middle of his room.
Classic.
All right. So the first scene, it's a classic Baki fight. I will say the animation in this, it seemed like they spent their budget in other places. A lot of very slideshow-esque combat going on. But it ends with Baki picking up Kozue very romantically, almost like a honeymoon carry, running her away. And then Hanayama just says, "I'm not going to fight you. Goodbye." And yeah. Oh, I forgot. I did have one quote. So did you listen to the English version, right?
No, I did the Japanese version with subtitles.
All right, then that's too bad because I was there was one line I wanted to bring up. So I actually listened to it in the subtitle to see what it was. So when Baki slaps Yanagi in the subtitle, it says, "You better grit your teeth."
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. So in the English version, instead, Baki says,
You two like getting bitch slapped?
"You two like getting bitch slapped?" And then slaps. I thought that was
awesome.
an interesting choice. So at the end of that scene, we come to our the lovers at the docks. We see in a dark what's the word I'm looking for? Just
Pier.
a dark night, a pier. Yeah, I was trying to set the mood, and the only word I could think of was "it's night." But down on the pier, we can see Doyle is there wearing sunglasses now, and Katsumi still burnt from before. And walk me through a little bit of this scene, Jax.
Okay, so curious you say burned. I thought he had smallpox. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I definitely picked up on the gay lover vibe. So clearly, not Doyle, the other one, the guy with the eye patch and the sunglasses.
That's Doyle.
That's Doyle. Oh, that is Doyle. Okay, so Doyle seems like he is being sent away to the Middle East.
The Middle East, huh? It's a kind offer.
On a large shipping container.
Mm-hmm.
And the lover, the bald dude, what's his name?
Katsumi.
Katsumi. So Katsumi seems to be the one sending him to the Middle East, and they have this kind of goodbye moment that's very emotional, with a very emotional music playing over the dark night, as you say. And then he says, before I go, I want you to do one more thing, which is teach me karate. And there's kind of like an interesting lover's moment around him caressing his back and showing him the move, and then he progresses into this instant karate master overnight.
But may I make one more request of you? Would you mind teaching me a little karate?
Hey, nice work. Seriously, I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah.
With one single move.
The Seiken.
The Seiken, exactly, which he can't pronounce the first time he hears it, which is hysterical. And then an hour later, he's a master. So, great. And then he leaves, and as he's leaving, the bald dude, I already forgot his name, Katsumi? No. Kasumi.
Yeah.
He calls at him and karate throws his black belt. And then Doyle catches it. And we'll pause there because I imagine the next scene you're going to want to break into on its own.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
So this scene continues the sort of... So my personal theory with Doyle is that, like... So this comic or manga was written a while ago. Like, I think this arc was written around 1999, 2001. In Japan. Like, it's... I think that the concept of, like... a gay character would still be a bit, progressive for this, especially for this genre. So Editor Steve here. I just wanted to do a brief segue because I think I was doing a pretty sweeping statement there on something that I am not an expert on. So I wanted to do a bit more research and just come out and say that basically, like, in some ways anime at that time, like Baki's manga in the 90s was not some progressive like masterstroke that did something nobody else was doing. Like, there were anime and manga at the time that had more queer representation and handled it better. But at the same time, I don't think there were many examples of like a shonen or like actiony manga like Baki doing this. So I spent some time and I looked on Wikipedia and like I don't know, like in the 90s before Baki, like Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura are both positive examples from what I can tell of queer representation. On the other hand, I saw Dragon Ball. I just had like a Wikipedia list of LGBT characters in anime, and so I saw Dragon Ball on here, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I saw that the characters were General Blue, a canon gay character, and Nazi, and also Otoko Kusuki, who is described as a stereotypical gay participant in the World Martial Arts Tournament, where he freaks out Godin and Trunks with his flirtations, with his name translating literally to man love. So not all of the representation back then was that positive. I also found one which I couldn't really decide if it was positive or not. Apparently in Hetalia, which is a show where countries are anthropomorphized into people, Sweden is described as being gay, but only for Finland. I don't know if that's positive representation or not. Take that as you will. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled Baki content. So I think that Doyle was an attempt at like almost a queer coded character. There are a lot of elements in other episodes that we've covered. In this one, we can see Katsumi is lighting Doyle's cigarette for him. You talked about the training of the martial arts. He throws him his black belt before they leave, and then just sort of rides off into the night in like a very move I could see Danny Zuko doing in Grease. So yeah, it was an interesting cap off. What's also interesting is like though Doyle had a bunch of scenes very similar to this with just Retsu in a previous episode. Like it seems like every time Doyle is with like a new character, they have the same interactions. Like there isn't like a specific romance being delivered. It's just whenever Doyle's in a scene, this is happening. So I don't know. It's it's interesting.
So Doyle's a stud. I thought what he had in that scene was special. You know, I thought this was a long-term character arc, but no, he's just a stud. Okay. Yeah,
everybody loves Doyle. Also, the karate move he learned, I don't know. It was just like a punch. I don't want to act like I'm a karate master, but I think I could have picked that up.
Yeah. To go from not being able to pronounce the name of it to being able to, but he's got steel in his bones, so I guess that makes his punches extra strong.
Yeah, Doyle must have been a bundle of surprises watching this when he starts fighting. I bet.
Crazy, because he seems like kind of a skinny loser, right? Because he can't even do karate, and then suddenly he learns karate, and then we'll get into the next scene. That's wild.
Yeah. So this is the thing is in this show everybody's got a gimmick, like Baki's just a good fighter, but everyone else has like some trick or some style. And the death row inmates have the most ridiculous tricks for them. But we'll sort of bring them up as we go. So Doyle gets on the boat because, of course, he's being shipped off to the Middle East, which is as vague as possible, by some guy who works at the Shinshinkai dojo, who also is, I guess, an international ferryman. But before the boat can leave, who is on the boat but Ryuko Yanagi, right from the previous scene. Yanagi and Doyle, of course, two death row inmates who escaped seeking defeat. It seems that Yanagi is upset with Doyle for his change of ways, his change of heart, not being a ruthless criminal anymore. And so they begin to fight each other, just like every conflict is resolved on this show. Jax, what were you thinking while the fight was going on?
It's a pretty intense fight. First of all, poor Doyle already only has one eye, and then within the first punch, because he tries his karate move he just learned and misses, and then he gets punched apparently very lightly, but his eye goes black, and now he's completely blind. Yeah. And then the poor guy, the other guy he was fighting, lights a cigarette and leaves it on the edge. And then Doyle's all distracted by the cigarette because he can't see, and he thinks that that's where the other fighter is. And then suddenly the guy's behind him, and then suddenly...
That is some fourth dimensional chess moves right there. Like, I'm going to blind the guy and then take my cigarette, put it somewhere else because he'll know that the smell is there, and that's just leaps ahead of Doyle.
Where is he? I can't hear him. Cigarette smoke. He's close. 13. No. 10 feet away.
Yeah, which I don't understand how Doyle didn't figure that out. I mean, who lights up a cigarette in the middle of a fight? It seems like an odd choice. So, you feel like you could have figured it out, that it was a bit of a distraction technique. But then all of a sudden, Doyle also doesn't have his black belt anymore, and it's around his neck because the other guy stole it, which is wild. And then he's being choked, and then he falls overboard after getting punched again. And it becomes, kind of a wild fight. Oh, and then at one point, blades come out of his arms, which is an interesting surprise. But I guess, as you said, lots of gimmicks. Then that's relevant because... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to explain, yeah. So Doyle's gimmick, of course, is that just like many magicians, he has put a bunch of contraptions inside his body to fight people with. So he has hooks that come out of his body. He has explosives. He has... basically like a robo arm so he can punch you stronger. He's got a whole bag of tricks up there.
So I'm a little confused, if he's such a good fighter and he's got all these tricks, why he didn't already know karate.
Because there's two types of people in the world. There's honorable people who use martial arts, and there's death row inmates who despise the martial arts and use cheap tricks to fight people. That's like the divide, I'd say.
Gotcha. So poor Doyle falls over the boat, is hanging there by his necktie black belt.
Worst way to be hanging.
Yeah. And then climbs his way up, and as he's on his way up, the other guy pulls out a samurai sword and tries to chop his head off after a speech about what a disappointment he is.
In ancient Japan, a special warrior would chop off the head of a disgraced samurai who was committing seppuku. And you are most definitely a disgraced samurai.
And goes to chop off his head, and obviously Doyle has the metal in his arms, so the blade kind of doesn't shatter, but dents quite significantly. And then there's a whole monologue of, oh my god, how did that happen? How did you do that? And then he goes for another swipe, and Doyle leaps off kind of Mufasa style and falls into the ocean.
Yeah. Rough day for Doyle. Going blind, choked, falling into the ocean with a bleeding arm. Yeah. I did like the annoyance Yanagi had when his blade got all chipped up. I thought that was very relatable.
I'm assuming this sword is significant because he kind of said like my master sword or something to that effect.
Yeah, I don't know. He's never brought it up before. I don't think he's ever going to bring it up again.
My beautiful sword. What the hell is going on?
That's the thing about Yanagi. So we've been joking about this all season, but unlike the other death row inmates, Yanagi has like 5 different gimmicks. He has a vacuum hand. He can poison you with oxygen. He has a poison hand. He had 2 swords that he put on whips. He can slap you so hard that it will rip your skin off. And he's never used one more than like once in an episode, and then never again. He's a weird guy.
It's good to be a jack of all trades. He's a multifaceted villain.
Yes, yeah, that's called character depth. If you know a lot of ways of kung fu, you're a deep, well-written character.
Yeah, or a sloppy writer, right? Just, I forgot what superpower I gave him last time, so let's just give him a new one.
I wonder if it's just one of those things where like each week people are writing in like, this guy sucks, and he's like, all right, back to the drawing board. Let's give him a sword this week. So that's Doyle and Yanagi. Going back to our remaining death row inmate, we get a little bit of backstory on Sikorsky in two scenes back to back. Jax, do you want to just walk me through what you were thinking?
Yeah, I mean, first the question, you said 2 scenes back to back. Is it the same character, the guy who's stuck in the hole, and then the guy who shows up in the washroom for the fight?
Yes.
Okay, wild. I didn't get that. So I guess what happened is it's a flashback to when he's in, I'm assuming, prison, and it's kind of like a Dark Knight Bane type
it's
deal.
very like that, except the walls are flat.
Yeah, and metal. But it's this giant kind of cylindrical hole. And they ask him, how would you escape from here? And he's got this moment of, you'd have to be able to hold yourself up by a small nut upside down while you read a short novel, which I guess is the prelude to the next scene where he does the entire fight by holding onto a fire sprinkler. Not sure why he viewed that as an advantage, hanging by a thumb on a fire sprinkler, but I guess it allowed him to kick aimlessly into the...
That's what I was thinking the whole time. Like, it's really cool he can do this, but like, is this an advantage? Like,
very Star Wars. Like, I have the high ground. You know, I'm standing on a 3-foot pile of dirt, and suddenly I'm undefeatable. That's the vibe I got.
That's some impressive hand strength you've got.
That is so Sikorsky. So yes, so Sikorsky, the final gimmick of the episode is Sikorsky has very strong fingers, and the amount of leverage he gets out of that is absolutely incredible. We do get a very classic Baki scene where a professional world-class athlete is just wheeled in to be just basically show that they're no match for a martial artist. So this professional rock climber says, like, it's impossible. I could never do it.
You gotta be kidding me. Give me a break. We're not lizards or monkeys, you know?
And then, you know, obviously Sikorsky did do it. Because in the Baki universe, professional fighters are better than everybody at everything. Even if you devote your life to it.
Yeah, the term was not human. You know, you could never do this. You could do it if you could hold onto this nut, but that's not human anymore. And then I guess that sets up the character to not be human.
Exactly. Which is so funny because, like, so, you know, like, when you hear that, you think Sikorsky, this guy's going to be a badass. I'll just put that out here. For the next, I think, 3 episodes, Sikorsky is just going to get his ass handed to him repeatedly, like, in, like, a parade of pain. So this build-up is very sort of ironic, honestly. But before we get into that, so Sikorsky we have to figure out who's going to beat him up, and of course it is Jack Hanma.
Who are you? Well, that's the $1 million question now, isn't it? Let's just say I'm someone who's definitely not on your side.
So do you know who that big blonde guy was? I mean, the bigger blonde guy.
The one from the first scene?
No, the one at the end who fights Sikorsky.
Right, yeah, I don't know. He just kind of showed up in a street in Tokyo and then was like, this is too public and the police suck. Let's go find a place to fight. And then both of them calmly walk to a bathroom and then decide that this is where they're going to fight. And it's like 3, 2, 1, go.
And this is why a lot of public bathrooms have been closed down or locked. There were just too many pro fighters hanging on to the fire escapes and all that. So of course this is Jack Hanma, who is Baki's half brother from Canada, who is very much taller than him nowadays. And yeah, they just fight in a bathroom. Sikorsky tries to hold on to the sprinkler and just kick Jack. Of course, Jack is more monster than man and is able to get kicked in the face 5 times and then just pull him off of the wall. It's honestly a pretty straightforward fight, but what's really exciting is how the episode ends. So, Jax, tell me how the episode or what we're leaving for next week.
So it ends. Embarrassing that I'm bad with like kind of faces and characters. So did I see this character who's at the phone booth chatting, saying my phone died? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Hey, baby. Sorry, my stupid phone battery died on me. But I just couldn't wait to hear your sweet voice,
So he's sitting there. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. He's just talking on his phone. And then the 2 of the fighters just pile into this booth with him and look very menacing. And then the scene ends.
Dylan? You there? What's going on?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Yeah, this scene ends with them closing the door to the phone booth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Jack Hanma, he's probably taller than the phone booth, and then Sikorsky in a phone booth that I'm gonna say is 3 feet wide, 2 feet long, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have trouble fitting in there with another person, and I'm not gonna fight anybody. Well, I don't know where I'm going with that. Anyway.
I guess the one advantage is it's so small that, with the 3 of them piled in there, I wouldn't be worried about getting my ass kicked because nobody can move.
Just wait. Just watch next episode. Somebody's getting their ass kicked in that telephone booth. It's honestly one of my favorite parts of the show, and it's just like, I don't know, there's a lot of Baki like traditions that come up all the time. Like I didn't even mention it, but of course in this episode Doyle broke his sunglasses and threw the shards of glass at Yanagi, which happens every episode. But having a fight and then having a random civilian in it for no other reason than that the random civilian can narrate the fight is something that happens a lot in Baki. Because a fight's only impressive if you have a guy going, "Oh, I can't believe it! They're fighting in the telephone booth, and I'm right here." But we'll see.
Okay, so it's not collateral damage. I thought that it was the poor bystander who was in trouble. I'm not entirely sure why. Why do people pick random places for fights? Like, oh, we can't fight in the street. We have to fight in a bathroom. We can't fight in the street. We have to fight into a already occupied telephone booth.
Well, here's the thing. Why did they do that in character? No idea. Why did they do that from a story perspective? Like, Bagi's been running for probably, I don't know, at least like 30 or 25 years or something. So you got to spice it up a little bit with the fights. Make each one a little more memorable. Yeah, we'll get to... Sikorsky has a very memorable fight coming up with Gaia, but that's for another day. All right, well, that's more or less the entire episode. So, Jax, I have a question I ask after talking about it with everybody. Now that you've watched an episode of Baki, do you think that it is a good show?
I mean, I am not an anime fan. I struggle to watch pretty much the only anime show that I've ever watched is BoJack Horseman.
It's not an anime.
So I'm not the right person to ask. Oh, there you go. So there you go. See, I'm even wrong on that one. I'm sure I just made a ton of people mad by driving that comparison. So that is how wrong of a person I am to ask. I do think that it is wild. There's so many storylines going on that I think you definitely wouldn't get bored if you're watching this. Mm-hmm. But it also means that it's not something you just passively put on because so many storylines going on that you have to be paying attention to, knowing all the characters and the dimensions and the interplay and how they work on. Like the fact that Baki, who's the title character, the titular character, wasn't in the entire episode apart from the first like 4 minutes. And then everything else was going on. I was like, my first impression was just being overwhelmed. There are 7 different scenes, none of which had recurring characters. So yeah, I mean, I think that's my answer is I don't really know. But if you are looking for crazy complex shows, I think this one's for you.
Yeah, no, I do think it's a show with a lot of complexity, room for interpretation, sort of draws the intellectual crowd. And it's so funny that you're talking about the lack of Baki in this episode because, like, first of all, like, it's a very apt issue to bring up. Like, for a show titled Baki, he doesn't show up a lot. This is probably the most fighting he's done all season in this episode, I would say.
Wow.
Editor Steve. That's true unless you go back literally 1 episode. But other than that, it's the most fighting. He hasn't, unless you count his encounter with Kozue as a fight, which he did consider it like a fight. But anyway, what was I gonna say? Oh, I was also gonna say BoJack Horseman, great show. Good,
yeah,
good,
you want to talk about intellectual kind of mental health driven shows that really make a statement on society and the human existence. Fantastic.
Well, I do,
show.
and that's why I have a Baki podcast. Yeah, Baki and BoJack are like the exact opposite. Like if I want to have fun, I'm gonna watch Baki. If I want to feel sad, I'll watch some BoJack. But anyway, that is more or less it. Thank you for coming on the show, Jax. This was a hoot and a half. Next week, we'll figure out what happened in the telephone booth. And who knows who will be the guest. I'm trying to figure that all out. Oh, I wanted to give a heads up, just as a continuity thing. When we finish this season, I will be taking a break for a week or two on updates so that I can build up a bit of a stockpile on stuff. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, thanks for coming on the episode, Jax. That's all the Baki we've got to talkie. See you all next week.
I'll be a listener.
Na, na, na.